Hey there, I'm Patrick Ewers, and I'm the founder and CEO of Mindmaven. We're an executive coaching firm that focuses on helping startup leaders achieve true greatness by focusing on relationships. And we primarily do that by freeing up about a day a week through principles of intent and leverage. Today I'm super excited that we're joined by Mehta here. He's the CEO of Gainsight, and it's the number one rated custom success platform. And you guys focus us really on helping people build deep and lasting relationships with the customers.
That's right. Yeah,
that's about right. So you guys probably get where we're going with this. Both of us are super excited about relationships in that way. But when it comes to Nick, I have to say there's something even more exciting about it, and that is his leadership style has been actually recognized quite a few times through awards, and he is a tremendous believer in building big businesses on the principle of human first, right? And that's exactly what we wanted to talk to you guys about. So, Nick, let me just get going on asking this question: what actually does human first leadership, in your own words, mean?
Yeah,
and why do you think it's important to startup founders and CEOs?
Yeah, it's kind of interesting because you and I talked about this the first time we met, and I think we had one of those funny meetings where we met on, I think, on Twitter, right? Or on social media.
That's right.
And it seemed like we shared a lot of values, maybe using different words, but a lot of the same feelings and beliefs. So I'll tell you our story about what we call human first. And it really goes back to the idea of like as we were getting our company started, we've been around about 10 years. And as we were getting started, I knew from the beginning that values in our company were very important to me. And just, if nothing else, just because like that's the one small bit of control I have as a CEO on, this world is the little bubble that we're in with our company. And, the values of our company can really influence the people inside the company and outside. And so we started out really trying to be thoughtful from the very beginning about our values and picking values that were very intentional to who we are and authentic to who we are, versus what I think a lot of companies end up in that situation where, they cut and paste the values from other places and they end up with very generic values like, customer focused or, winning or something like that. Right. And so for us, we came up with some kind of zany values from the beginning. For example, one of our values is childlike joy, which means bring the kid in you to work every day. Another one is called stay thirsty, my friends, which is all about ambition, but it's actually based on like a TV commercial for beer, right? So we started with these values that were, at least in our world, were pretty human and just authentically who we were. Anyways, a few years proceeded, since 2013 is when we launched the company. And in 2017, we're about 5 years in, and we were, trying to be a grown-up company. We were maybe a couple hundred people at that point. And we had an offsite, and we wanted to go and basically plan for the next year. Every company does this, right? You get together, you plan for the next year. And we had all read this book called Scaling Up. Scaling Up is a great book if you're doing a kind of growth stage startup. And in that book, it's called the one-page strategic plan. And you fill out your goals for the next year, your financial targets, your values. So we had all that. And then there was this box that said, what's the purpose of your company, right? Why do you exist as a company? And so we actually had thought of for a while. We're like, why do we exist? And it wasn't just the software that we made. So we make software that helps companies retain and grow their customers. And it's great. We really believe in it. But it wasn't just that. Like, honestly, we all are like self-aware enough that we're kind of randomly in this world. Like we could be in lots of different jobs or whatever. And what we're doing as a company is not existentially solving humanity's greatest needs. We're not like, curing disease or flying humans to other planets or something like that. Right. And so what we thought about was maybe it was less about what we do and more about like why we do it and how we do it. And some folks, probably have seen this great Simon Sinek TED talk called Start With Why, which is all about the idea of like, why do you do things? And we thought about that why, and we reflected on our values, which were a little bit different from the traditional corporate values. And also like just the way we operated. And one of the things I think from the beginning we tried to operate as, and it wasn't even try, it was just sort of natural, was trying to be the same person that we are at work as we are at home, as much as possible, as much as we're comfortable. And also trying to think of that other person on the other side of the video conference or the table or the customer or the potential customer as a human being too. And one of the things we reflected on is a lot of the business world's lessons traditionally have been the way to be successful is to be less human. People say it's not personal, it's business, right? That's a very common phrase actually from the movie The Godfather. People talk about, leave your emotions at the door. You know, people are your greatest assets, right? Using the term assets. And so we
Right.
heard all that stuff that was was kind of dehumanizing. And no criticism. By the way, you challenged me on this the last time we chatted, so you feel free to do it again. I think that's fine. Other people can do it that way, and that works. Clearly, there's a lot of great businesses that have been built in a way that's less about the humans. But we said, is there a way where you could actually win and still be what we call human first, remembering that you yourself are human, the customer is a human, whether they bought your software or not. You know, the employee is a human, whether they're working for you or they just left your company. Our competitors are human beings. And so our purpose statement that we wrote in this little box in 2017 was to be living proof you can win in business while being human first. So living proof. So we have one example, win in business. Like we still want to be able to win. Otherwise it's not that impressive. And while being human first. Right. And the idea is like, we do both. And that's the experiment that we are on. And, you know, the experiment will never be over, but feel good about it so far.
Yes, that's true. And I remember our conversation when we talked about it, and there was this this feedback that I basically said is just like, you know what, I actually think you can be stronger on this. You know, you give people the ability to do whatever they want to do, and you probably are right with that. We need to have a certain open mind, but I am a firm believer that basically you have not come across anybody who's been able to reach their fullest potential without help from others.
That's right.
It's a state that doesn't exist, right? And if that's true, and it feels like it's a somewhat universal truth, you know, then basically this concept of human first, or at least doing it with humans and in the right way, is probably still going to be the fastest way in which you can get the biggest story, the fullest potential of the vision you're pursuing.
Yeah,
whatever that might be.
I do think that there's something powerful about it, which is pretty simple, which is, you know, if you are having to be a different person at work than the person you think you really are, and you put on kind of different masks, you know, you just are limiting your own potential, whether that's the employee or the customer, anyone, right? You're just more limited, and you bring out more of the person's potential, the more they can be themselves. And I think that's part of it. And then the more we see our peers as also human beings, the more we bring out their potential, and it's a virtuous cycle. And I'll tell you, like, you know, we've had, it's been incredible. I think Gainsight's not the only company culture that's great, and there are lots of all other models, but I'll argue the power of culture in general is incredible. We've had people come from other companies, and you know, you do a reference check on that person, and somebody says, oh, they're really tough to work with, and I don't know about them in your company. And then they come into a different culture, and somehow that person's a different person, right? And that's what's incredible. Is there's some cultures, it's sad actually, some cultures kind of hold people down and make them not be who they are. But the opportunity for everyone watching is, if you are passionate about this, you can really have a different person show up at work than the one that was showing up at their previous employer. And that's just, it's magical.
I want to react to something that you said that I am very passionate about. And that is that you said, you know, like, if you are trying to show up as somebody else at work, right, and you have to hold up that persona, you can't reach your fullest potential. Well, I would argue two more things. Number one, you end up wasting a lot of energy.
That's
because
exactly
it's hard to be somebody else that you are. Number two, you can't be happy. You can't possibly be happy because you're wasting all of this energy of just trying to be this person that you actually aren't. Right. And so that's why I think a human first culture has at least built in a you know, very defensible advantage to anybody else, because people can show up being themselves.
Yeah,
right?
I mean, that's the thing. And I'd love to ask you too, because I felt like that's when we connected, you know, again, different terminology, but there was this element of like authenticity, of knowing who you are and being who you are. And for me, I will say I'm so far down this rabbit hole that it's the only thing I know how to do now. So literally, I am the same person, you know, I'm in my home office now, out there with our kids, with my wife, with my friends, with my brother, with my parents, at work, with our customers. It's like this, there's one version of Nick, and it's this weird mix of all these different things, right? Like some of them are customer success and SaaS, and some of it's being a dad and being into pop culture and reading about physics. And it's just all one thing. And I feel like you are the same. Like, I don't know, does that resonate with you? But just like, you're like a mix of a lot of different things, and you're just that one thing, right?
Yes, and I designed this business that I'm in just to be able to be myself.
That's right. I can tell. That's why I mentioned you.
Nick, there's an amazing story. If you were to dig into me, is I like failed miserably in the corporate America world. I couldn't play that game, and it was very, very unhappy. And I thought to myself, there must be a better way to do this. And 15 years ago, I started Mindmaven to find that way, and then eventually teach people how to do that. And so, yes, I think I'm absolutely with you. This is also a really interesting segue. One thing that I wanted to give our listeners today, a little bit more pragmatics, like how does that, for example, change into, tactical day-to-day life? I'm going to throw one example out, and maybe that fires some ideas, and maybe you can give us some examples of like how it is in day-to-day life. Because the more examples we can give people today, the more they will believe us. Right. And so the example that I have is I think the most powerful relationship building principle you'll ever come across, or not even a principle, it's a habit. And the reason it's so powerful is because it's so simple and yet so impactful. We call it positive alacrity. Positive alacrity is based on this habit that says whenever you see or become aware of something positive, you think something positive, and you do a quick test. Do I genuinely feel that way? Do I really feel positive about this impulse that I saw? Voice it. Just voice it, right? Almost every leader that you will run into will have throughout the week 4 or 5, maybe 7 thoughts of positivity. And they're very lightweight thoughts. They're like, oh, I would have never thought of that. Or how did they come up with that? Or, that's an interesting way of putting this. Like, not even like amazing, they saved the company type of positive, but the slightly north of neutral positive, right? And what happens is that they arise in our consciousness to a conscious level for about 2-3 seconds, and then they disappear again.
That's a really good point. Yeah.
And we're not using them.
No.
We're just not using them at all, right? And so what I'm saying is the moment is consciousness, just voice it. There's some caveat situation where it might not be appropriate to voice it, so then you earmark it for later. And then you walk over, for example, Mehta, to, let's say, your CFO. Because you've seen in the office that he sat down with one of the interns and taught them how to do pivot tables in Excel, despite the fact that you're about to launch a big conference like Pulse or something. Right. And then you walk over to his office and you say, hey, I don't have much time. I have to hop off to another meeting, but I just wanted to let you know that I thought it was absolutely awesome that you took the time to do so, because it's part of value X or Y. In this case, we take care of each other, or we supported each other. And I really appreciated that. And then you walk away and you say, but I got to go. You put your hand up and you say, don't talk back to me. I got to go.
Right.
And do
there's so much wisdom in that, Patrick, because I would say that there's, especially as organizations get bigger, there's so much power in a leader doing that. And so much impact. So I'll show you an example from last week where, we were I was in a, video meeting with a customer, and one of our key leaders, her name's Caitlin, she was going to be in the meeting and presenting, but then her flight got delayed, which happens to all of us. And so she recorded this incredible short video for the customer and did an amazing job and really connected with them, which is hard to do in a recorded video.
Sure.
And so I called her right after the meeting and did the exact, I like the way you do it, technique that you described. I called her, I was like, I just want to let you know what you did. And also I think what you said, Patrick, which is really actionable, how it connects to what matters in our company, our values and whatever. Right?
Yes.
Like that, to me, that's important. It's not just like, oh, great job, but how does this fit into like the way we think about things? And I think that's such that virtuous cycle of positivity, but not just generic positivity, not just like great job, but specific positivity. That really makes sense. Positive alacrity. Is that what you said?
It's called positive alacrity. Yeah, I'd be happy to share some more content around it for you. But here's the interesting thing. I wouldn't be surprised if when you called her, did you notice that she said something along the lines, hey, Nick, I'm just doing my job? Or
I think so. It's funny. I don't remember exactly, but I knew where you were going. And 100% of the time, people try to minimize that feedback.
And that's why you have to hang up on them before they can talk back.
Away or hanging up. That's a great point.
So that they can't minimize it, because it actually has a full-on negative impact on how much energy they harness from that positive experience.
They bask in and soak it in, and it's so great. And obviously, there's so many ways to do that. I think the way you describe of a call or saying in a meeting, and sometimes like one way they have to bask in it is if you send them something physically. And
That,
you know, I
yes.
gotta say, when people send that, you know, nowadays it's so rare, and you get like a nice thank you note about something really unexpected or a little gift in the mail, it makes such a difference. So I love that.
Yeah. Hey, give us more examples of like sort
Yeah,
of the tactical
I'll
expressions that
give
you
you.
see day to day that makes,
I was thinking
your
about this.
company be human first.
Yeah, there's a million different ones, and as you know, these things are about tactics, right? And I think you can kind of almost like look at the tactics and then zoom out and find like the narrative and the generalizations. So I'll think of like there's kind of four buckets, or actually I'll say three buckets and then one meta bucket. So one bucket is really about finding ways that you can normalize traditions where people can open up a little bit. And so a very simple example of this, which I'm a huge believer of, especially in this world of hyper productive video meetings, which many of us live in. In hyper productive video meetings, even more than the old world, there's less of a chance to chit chat, right? There's like in the old world, you know, get in the conference room, you know, people are walking in, you talk in the hallway, people are running late. So the meeting has, you know, there's more chit chat than, and in the new world, you're on the meeting, everyone's like, let's just get down to business, jump into the agenda. It's very inhuman, right? And so one thing we do in almost every meeting is an icebreaker. And and it's really it sounds trivial, but because we do it all the time, it really has an effect. And it can be very simple things like, you know, what's your go-to karaoke song? Or it could be something deeper, like talk about a time that you were moved recently, like emotionally moved, or that you cried. And like we've had like some serious ones. And I gotta say, it changes the entire tenor of the meeting. And don't just do this internally. So we do this with clients in our client executive meetings. We always do an icebreaker question, and people, they open up so much. I'll tell you the story of Nate Bartlett is one of our CSMs. He's really creative. And he did a meeting recently with the client where I was on it and Nate, and then the client, two of the people from the client, senior executives. And Nate said, okay, I want everyone to go around and share the best concert you've ever been to. And I, of course, I'm a big Taylor Swift fan. So I said 1989 Taylor Swift. And so then what he did after the meeting was send everyone a Spotify playlist with songs from each of the concerts. And you know, again, are we all going to listen to that playlist? Who knows? But does that create a different vibe with all of us? For sure. You know, so that's number one is really normalize traditions that wake us up to the human element in our day-to-day routine.
Nick, let me react to that because I have a few thoughts that might actually be really interesting for you know, for you, but also for the audience. Number one, the last thing you said about the notes, about the playlists. 90% of the value that a human perceives is the intent, not the actual consumption of it. And that's the whole point. And that's why you don't have to worry about it being that meaningful. It just has to be north of neutral, as I like to say.
Patrick, I'll tell you another quick story of that one, and then move on to a second tip, which is like, you know, we do different customer events, and you know, we do icebreaker questions in those events. And like this was like a dinner we did years ago, and I just saw one of the customers that was at that, like literally 6 years later. And he said, you know, Nick, I still remember that dinner because you went around and asked everyone what their childhood dream was. And I said that I want to be the person wanted to be a postal service worker, like a mail person, right? Like, you know, delivering the mail. And so literally I had my assistant send him like a US Postal Service hat, like a fake one or whatever, right? It's not like that guy's going to do anything with it. Like there's nothing practical he can do. But that thought and that feeling, that connection to childhood, it's so big. Let me hit the other two because I know you know we'll run short on time. So number two is so we talked about like arresting ourselves with moments of humanity. The second way you could, I think, to consider doing that is to really think about those moments of truth in the journey of either a customer or an employee. If you want a great book on this, there's a great book called Power of Moments by Chip and Dan Heath. Awesome book, really goes through this.
Oh, yes.
But I'll tell you an example of a moment if you're an employer. There is a big moment that most people screw up. And this moment is when your teammate tells you they're leaving. Okay. So then the most people screw this up because they make them feel guilty or betrayal, or they don't talk to them. And it's horrible. It's horrible because then that person leaves with this horrible ending memory, even if it was 5 years of great stuff. Right.
Yes.
And so this a very inhumane way to leave. And so what do I try to do when somebody tells me they're leaving, which by the way, over 10 years of Gainsight, that's happened hundreds and hundreds of times.
For sure.
And my response is, first of all, thank you for everything you've done here, because most likely they've had a big impact. Number two, congratulations. Because, you know, although we're going to be bummed that they're leaving, they're excited about something new. Otherwise they wouldn't be leaving. Right. And they're on the beginning of a new journey Why are you killing the buzz of their new journey versus being excited for them? And then number 3, like, how can I help you in this future? And one of the things I try to do is, they post on LinkedIn about their new job. I try to congratulate them. Sometimes I send them a bottle of wine. The next job they're taking, I try to stay in touch with them. I'm privileged whenever they call me for job advice, and so basically this whole idea of really thinking about those moments, and the moments that are the most human, whether it's new employee, person leaving, death in the family, God forbid, baby born. And how do you find those ways to really celebrate the humanity of your teammates versus just thinking of them as employees?
Yes.
And
you had one more, right?
Last one, bonus one. Okay. So third one, one of the ways to really show that humanity is do it yourself as a leader. And so this is all about vulnerability. Obviously the leader of all vulnerability, Brene Brown, is the person that taught us all this, right? If you haven't seen her TED Talk, please do. And what I try to do is, I started this years ago where we had a company event, everyone together. This is 7-8 years ago. And I was like, I'm doing my typical company presentation about how things are great and all that stuff. But then I closed at the moment of vulnerability. I talked about being lonely as a kid and how that's still with me today. And I wonder whether people really still like me, even though I speak in these big crowds. And that created this positive, virtuous cycle where like everyone else was opening up at this event. So then I started doing it at our customer event. At every customer event, I closed at the moment of vulnerability. Talked about being lonely, talked about depression, talked about my dad having dementia, which is really hard. Talked about all of these things because it just causes us to open up. If the leader is willing to be human, there's more permission for other people too as well.
Right. And you can do that in any walk of life. You can do it on the stage like you sometimes do, but you can also do it in one-on-ones. And
that's exactly right. Exactly right.
Yeah. Man, this was awesome. Thank you so much for taking the time, Nick. First of all, for everybody who's listening, I think you felt the energy and how powerful this is. And it shows, actually. I believe that if I'm correctly informed, Gainsight earned the #1 spot on Glassdoor.
Yeah,
for
very,
2023.
very fortunate. That was actually a goal of ours many years ago, and it's incredible that it happened. So
yes, and 96% of them would recommend you to a friend, or Gainsight to a friend. And so, look, if you don't believe it from us, and believe the people that basically have worked there, it does work. Good, Nick. Thank you so much for your time, and I look forward to doing more.